Here we saw a sturdy hand on the bed, placed next to some long soft hairs. The hand gently ran through a few strands of the luscious long black hairs. Laying on top was a bared, naked man with well-defined juicy chest and abs, sweat dripping from various parts of his body. Underneath him was a beautiful woman with flushed face, reaching out her hand towards the man's face. With those soft, delicate hand, she gently caressed his face and called out his name, Manwha. Hearing his name spoke from her sweet mouth, stimulated him to plunge down and devour her like a hungry tiger, licking and sucking all of that belongs to her. She moaned from the intense pleasure while her fingernails dug into his skin, leaving her marks on his back. Let us take a moment to enjoy this passionate lovemaking session. As much as we want the pleasurable moment to last, nothing lasts forever. The word, "I'm getting a divorce," jolted the man awake from his slumber. He panted from the sweet dream or maybe bitter nightmare and slowly got out of the bed. The man thought he must be crazy as he scratched his head while heading to the bathroom. In the shower, he allowed the water to run down his impeccable body as if he was trying to purify his soul. He stared blankly, thinking of the name, Lee Yu-rei. It was the same name of his ex-wife. In the large white corporate building, the man is seen walking with a female and male subordinates through the lobby area. He instructed his subordinate to coordinate a meeting in half an hour. On the desk, we can see the name plaque, Choi Moo-won, and a business card on a clipboard consisting of the business proposal project information. While working, someone announced that the person in charge of the project has arrived. Moo-won looked at his watch and it seemed to be time already. Quickly, he reached out to grab the business card, glancing at the name one last time, before telling his secretary to let the person in charge in. The secretary guided the person through the door, just from the back, wearing blue chiffon shirt and blue heels. It is safe to assume that she was going to be a gorgeous lady. He waited anticipately for the person to appear before him. The lady greeted the man, "Nice to meet you." As expected, she was the person he knew. She left for 3 years without any notice. The woman paused, shock of the figure sitting before her. "Lee Yu-rei?" he called out. Here it takes us back to before the meeting between ex-husband and ex-wife. A man holding a coffee pot froze as he saw Lee Yu-rei guided to the president's office by a female. He stuttered, that person, while forgetting that the coffee pot was tilting. Another man wearing glasses shouted, "Secretary Kim. What are you doing? Have you gone crazy?" Secretary Kim shouted, "It's hot," as he spilled some of the coffee, not only wetting the floor but on his pants and shoes too. Secretary Kim turned to his colleague, the man wearing the glasses. He tried to explain who the woman was but was cut off by his colleague. The colleague proudly announced, "It's Lee Yu-rei, the person in charge of the project." Of course, he remembered. The colleague smirked and whacked Secretary Kim's back and asked if she was Secretary Kim's girlfriend. Irked by the statement, Secretary Kim shouted loudly that they will be in trouble. She was the president's ex-wife while his inner self screamed, "Ha! You know everything? You don't know shit." With revelation that the woman was the ex-wife of the secretary, it frightened the colleagues, making him squeeze the towels soaked with coffee back onto the floor again. The next scene was a flashback. Inside a car, Lee Yu-rei was sitting next to an elderly man. He instructed her that she can refuse if she don't want to. He wanted her to think positively. Lee Yu-rei then got out of the car and politely excused herself. Inside the lounge, she helped herself to a table. To her, the rumor of the man being cold and arrogant was not a big concern. She hoped this decision of her will be better than her current situation. While looking out the window, a person asked if she was Miss Lee Yu-rei. This jolted her to look towards the voice. Standing next to the chair across, a very handsome, tall man greeted her. After sitting down on the chair, he introduced himself as Choi Moo-won. She thought that he didn't sound as rude or eccentric as rumored. Choi Moo-won told her that he knows this marriage was solely for business purposes. If she was okay with it, they can proceed with the marriage. She readily agreed, discerning that he was rather indifferent. Moo-won then stood up and finalized the meeting. He was a man who made decision calmly by what they each need, thus making Lee Yu-rei's first impression of him pretty dull. Different scene of some times later after their initial meeting. While eating a meal, Moo-won asked Lee Yu-rei what she wanted to tell him. She suggested that they talk after the meal. He thought this talk was very important to her and suggested her to just say it. Lee Yu-rei bit her lips and hesitated. On the table a file paper for divorce was shown to Moo-won. She said she wanted them to get a divorce. Lee Yu-rei had no desire as a woman except for one thing, divorce. Now back to current time, in the president's office, Mu1 didn't expect Li Yurei to be here. She thanked him for his time. He told her that he is busy and hoped she knows and get to the point. A little anxious, she told him that she was informed of his decision through the sales department. However, if the contract is terminated before the production completion, it will be a loss for the company. Mu1 could care less about what happens to her company. Li Yurei pleaded if he could withdraw his decision. Mu1 did not want to, and asked her if she think he is a joke. She asked, then what is he? He asked if she drank something, to make her think that this is Hollywood. She wanted him to help her even when they are divorced. Flustered, she tried to explain that this situation was not personal. She was the person in charge of the project and only asking if he could reconsider. Mu1 cut her off, and asked if she still want to do business with him. He has nothing to gain from this business of hers. He ridiculed her that she was in such a bad condition, that she had to seek help from him, her ex-husband. Yurei clenched her fingers thinking to herself, she was not happy to see him either, but her thought then was brought back by Mu1's harsh words. He asked her if she is sad about the alimony she did not get before. Yurei abruptly stood up and told Mu1 that she will take her leave now. She was sorry for not being thoughtful. As she turned to leave, Mu1 stopped her and told her to sign the file he was holding in his hand. Sitting alone in the office, Mu1 looked at the file in his hand. The two secretaries, one holding a tray, stood outside the door contemplating to go in or not. On the tray was a juice glass and a file. The colleague asked, does Mu1 look unhappy? Secretary Kim answered, he is unhappy. The colleague asked then, how would Mu1 react if he goes in now? Secretary Kim pushed his colleague, telling him to go in regardless. Nervous, the colleague asked if he really have to go in now? Secretary Kim replied, yes, why is the colleague keeping Mu1 wait? Looking at the termination agreement on his desk, Mu1 let out a sigh. The man wearing glasses entered the office and asked how Mu1 would like his lunch. Seeing one of his secretaries, reminded him to ask if he has any document to review. The secretary nervously replied, yes, and told Mu1 the documents left by the director needs urgent approval and put the drink on Mu1's desk, and said it was Miss Li Yurei who asked him to deliver it. Glancing at the juice glass, brought back a memory of the distant past. While sick, he opened his eyes to Yurei's concerned face. She asked softly if he is feeling better and he should drink the juice. She mixed some honey in tomato juice. It will improve digestion. Holding the glass, he thought, this time it's tomato juice. Suddenly he felt a soft touch on his forehead and focused on Yurei. She was touching his, and her forehead to check his temperature and told him, he will get better. Mu1 patted his forehead just like how Yurei used to do, and the tomato juice glass was empty to the last drop. He muttered to himself, what exactly does she want? In a cafe, by the counter, a short-haired lady happily welcomes the guest but stopped halfway as soon as she saw the person entering. Unhappily, she said, the boss is on the second floor. Looking at Mu1 walking up the stairs, she pouted how he didn't show any courtesy. Mu1 pressed the doorbell nonstop until an angry man busted out the door grouching, are you trying to break the doorbell? Showing no courtesy, Mu1 walked right in, and asked the man to prescribe a sleeping pill. The man replied, I already did a few days ago. Then paused after realizing the meaning. He asked if Mu1 had any other stressful events lately. Mu1 sat on the couch, crossed his arms and legs before replying, it's on the headlines of the newspaper. He thought, you haven't seen it yet? The man replied, what is it about? You didn't even bat an eye when you read the newspaper every day during the restructuring of Sungwon Construction. Compared to that, the department store is not even stressful. If it's too much, just exercise. Before he finished, he shouted at Mu1, are you listening? Mu1 replied, no. Frustrated, the friends say he was going to call Mu1 anyway and asked, what's wrong with him these days? Mu1 replied, what did he do? A flashback of Mu1 complaining to another friend of various things. Mu1 asserted the wallpaper looked bad, the kitchen counter isn't to his liking, isn't it better to tear down the wall and open the space? He thinks the current paint color is better than the last one the friend mentioned. Mu1 insisted for the friend to reconsider all the points again. The friend shouted, that's the 6th time you've said that, you devil. Back to current scene, the man told Mu1 to stop bothering Changyu before Changyu kills Mu1 for real. He asked how many times is Mu1 going to ask Changyu to reconsider again? Mu1 replied nonchalantly, he will object if he don't like the house. The man asked Mu1 to ask his heart if problem lies in the house. Then suggested, Perhaps it's because of who used to stay in that house. Mu1 threatened sharply, don't even think of mentioning her. The man sighed while pouring a wine glass, you're going to need this more than sleeping pills now. In the restaurant, the same lady at the cafe arrived, apologizing for being late. Yurei told her she ordered first as it was getting late. The friend asked, why Yurei ordered so much? Yurei replied because she wanted the friend to eat a lot. Sensing something wrong, she asked, did you have a bad day? Yurei cried and nodded. The friend suggested for Yurei to have the first bite of tteokbokki. Yurei declined and wanted Junhee to eat with her. She told her friend, Junhee, she came but didn't have an appetite. Analyzing Yurei, Junhee put down the chopsticks before asking, did Yurei meet Choi Mu-won? Yurei acquiesced, yeah, Mu-won has gotten thin. She shouldn't have done that. Junhee growled, what thin? Frustrated, she shouted, what on earth? Why is Yurei only worried about Choi Mu-won, after her return? Junhee pointed her finger at Yurei and exclaimed, listen, he's a stranger to you now. You should only think about yourself, your career and your happiness. Got it? Yurei smiled unconfidently and replied she knows. Glasses clinking as several people cheers. A short-hair woman in business suit congratulated her team for a job well done. They have to prepare for the opening from the day after tomorrow, so everyone should drink as much as they want. Everyone exclaimed loudly, yes. Yurei smiled while observing the team. A voice asked Yurei if it's true she had a problem with Hangzhou project. Yurei turned to look at the source and greet Julia before answering that they suddenly asked for a high commission rate. But she already settled the rate at a reasonable price. Julia praised, good job, and then asked how long Yurei has worked with her. Yurei replied, almost 3 years. Julia smirked, that Yurei survived quite long while her ex-husband couldn't even last 3 years with her. Concerned Yurei asked what happened. Julia told Yurei, her ex-in-laws contacted her. They wanted the custody of her child, Sue. Her in-laws thought she was too crazy about her career, that she wouldn't be a good fit to take care of Sue. Yurei asked what Julia's going to do. Julia replied she's thinking of handing the custody over. Yurei asked, didn't you say you love Sue very much? Julia replied, this is for Sue's happiness. Wouldn't a rich dad be better for Sue than a mom who is always working? Yurei answered, we may never know. Sue might not be happy when he's with his rich dad. Instead, he might be happier with his busy mom. Yurei added that Julia shouldn't decide where Sue's happiness lies. Most importantly, does Julia want to live with Sue? Happiness isn't a one-way sacrifice, it's about giving and receiving. Julia repeated the words, I see, happiness is about giving and receiving. Yurei's words reverberated in Julia's heart. Yurei sat in an office meeting. The blonde man said the department store that signed the contract has unilaterally terminated the contract. Yurei replied, since Julia was in charge of this before, she didn't know much about it. The blonde man replied, Julia strongly recommended Yurei since Julia wants to focus on Sue's custody. Standing in front of the mirror in a public restroom, Julia in beautiful red dress spoke confidence to herself. This is her first task, entrusted by Julia. She can't disappoint. She couldn't think of any other way for Sungwon department store, so it's better to stop thinking about it. She applied a red lipsticks matching her red dress while assuring herself that if they launched Taesung department store at the right time, everything should be alright. A man who looked like Orochimaru greeted Yurei and apologized for being late. Yurei shook his hand and assured no problem. They are looking forward to working with the man today. The man smirked creepily and said Taesung department store also looked forward to her, too, while tightening his grip. Once settled on the table, Yurei asked when will Pillow launch? Her team is ready to enter the store and wish to work with Taesung store as soon as possible. The man glanced at his colleague with the look, the bait hooked, and handed a liquor bottle to Yurei that they can talk more after the drink. He started pouring drinks into Yurei's cup while she looked uncomfortable. Every cheers to the future of Taesung store and Pillow. Yurei downed the drink unsure if everything will be alright. The colleague asked his manager, the creepy man, if he saw Chairman Han Kyung-han and his daughter with Sungwon's CEO Choi Mu-won. Yurei coughed the drink and spilled it. The creepy manager answered that the rumor of Chairman Han supporting CEO Choi might be true after all. The colleague guessed so. They started chatting of the Chairman Han's daughter being single and CEO Choi is divorced. He's handsome and has no kids, making it no flaws in Mu-won. Yurei stepped out dazed, thinking he is getting remarried. She shouldn't have felt guilty since he's such a well-off man. Yurei walked out to get some fresh airs, but as she rounded the corner, she heard a voice called, "Mr. CEO." She stopped and saw a couple approaching her, a woman clinging to the man's arm asking if they could have another drink without her father. The guy replied that this should be it for the night since they have a meeting tomorrow. The woman seemed upset of the rejection and pretended to trip for a beauty trap. The man held her arm and asked if she is okay. She pretended to be a little drunk. The man suggested them to go back since the chairman may be waiting. Yurei hid around the corner of the corridor, listening to the couple's conversation. As the couple passed her, the man was none other than Mu-won. He glanced slightly at her as he passed, connecting eyes with Yurei. She turned her head the other side to avoid meeting his gaze. She came out of hiding and stared at the couple's retreating backs and thought, they looked good together. Outside getting some fresh airs, Yurei sighed, why she had to run into him today. After a while, she went back inside. Walking in a daze, while looking down, she saw a pair of shoes approached her and thought she had almost bumped into someone. She quickly apologized only to see that the man was Mu-won. He asked, what is she doing here? While thinking of what to say, Mu-won asked if she drank tonight. She replied yes, and that she's working tonight. Yurei then excused herself. Work? He replied while grabbing onto her hand as he found it hard to believe she had to work, being drunk this late into the night. Yurei addressed him by his full name, CEO Choi, to let go of her hand. Mu-won asked, did you just call me CEO Choi? Yurei replied yes. She thought they need to separate between work and private matters. She added, they were already divorced, he does not have to worry who she drinks with or what kind of work she has. This is not Hollywood. Just now, she used his words back on him. Yurei pulled her hand back and excused herself. Mu-won now could only look at her retreating back. He took out his phone and asked the person on the other side to investigate something. By the roadside, Mu-won was sending off his female companion from earlier and her father, Chairman Han. The female commented happily that she had so much fun and they should grab a drink together next time. Her father chided, yes. It's good to see young people hang out often and that it would be great to see Mu-won next to his daughter. Mu-won replied that Director Han and him both are busy, too. Director Han said that she is truly sad as Mu-won always refuse her. Mu-won cold replied that he doesn't drink much outside, except for work. He looked forward to working with her this season. When the car left, he finally got inside his car and asked Secretary Kim for updates. Secretary Kim replied, he found that Mrs. Yurei was meeting with the sales department of Taesung department store. Mu-won asked how many people from Taesung came? Secretary Kim replied, 4 people, including the manager. He then proceeded that there is one thing that bothers him. He took out his phone to play the recording. While listening to 2 of the men during a smoke break, he overheard them gossiping about Lee Yurei. One man said he heard she was part of the Chinese sales team. Shouldn't she have done this kind of dining once or twice? The other man replied that she emphasized a lot on her makeup and dress today. Does his colleague think they will get a room tonight? While they both laughed off at the thought. Angry, Mu-won got angry. He has to bring her. How dare those people be so impudent to Lee Yurei? What a perverted old man. Secretary Kim interrupted Mu-won's thought, that Lee Yurei took a taxi. Mu-won told him to follow her. Still dazed in thought, the driver notified Mu-won that Mrs. Lee Yurei already got off. Looking at her through the window, he thought she had to listen to those kinds of talk while working. Did she know about those dirty words the men were talking about her? Was it for this that she let him go? Suddenly, Mu-won saw Lee Yurei pounded her chest a few times. He instantly knew what this meant. She has a bad habit of hitting her chest. He often seen her like that after she came back from Auntie Yoon's house in Pyeongchang-dong. Mu-won thought of an instance in the past when Lee Yurei cut her hand while cleaning a fish. Auntie Yoon's was not too happy about it as blood was stained on the fish. Lee Yurei quickly apologized and offered to clean everything up. Aunt Yoon reprimanded how Lee Yurei was incapable of doing anything. Was it because she wants to show off that she has no mother? Does Lee Yurei want to mess up the memorial services? Mu-won suddenly interrupted the conversation. Aunt Yoon asked what Mu-won was doing in the kitchen. Mu-won said because he can hear all the commotion coming from the kitchen. Aunt Yoon brushed it off that nothing happened, it's just his wife hurt her own hand while cooking. Mu-won rushed to Lee Yurei and asked how could Aunt Yoon said it's nothing even when she hurt her hand? Aunt criticized that Lee Yurei should have been more careful. And, that is why he shouldn't marry anyone carelessly with no background. Appalled, Mu-won asked what she was trying to say. Looks like Aunt doesn't like someone knows a little bit less. But, that he, too, also do not have a mother to take care of him like what Aunt said. So, from now on, him and his wife will not come to the memorial service anymore. Mu1 turned to Li Yurei and told her that she and him don't need to be treated like that. Aunt Yun screamed unhappily while watching the couple left. At that time, before their divorce, he thought that he didn't need to intervene when she was belittled and trampled. He used to be like that. Who else can he blame? Making up his mind, he asked Secretary Kim to call Lawyer On. Hello? Yurei answered. The person introduced himself as Lawyer On Hyun Seob, that they met at legal team of Sung-won Construction. Li Yurei replied that she remembers and what is his business? In Lawyer On's office, Yurei was reading a document file. Lawyer On explained, it was the deed for a villa in Manhattan and deposit account in U.S. Bank. Li Yurei replied that she knows, but why is he giving it to her? She has no more relation with Sung-won anymore. Lawyer On replied, it was her compensation. Li Yurei explained that when Mu-won and him divorced, they agreed that she would not receive any compensation. Lawyer On explained that CEO has different thinking. He wants her to receive compensation with terms. The condition is that she resign from her current job. Li Yurei jolted up from the couch and declined adamantly. Lawyer On explained that the CEO said the amount she will receive can be adjusted whenever. Li Yurei declined farther. She has no intention to receive it. If she really wanted it, she would have accepted it a long time ago. While walking, Li Yurei thought of the last time she met Mu-won in his office, how he ridiculed that her situation there must be much worse, that she had to come back to her ex-husband. Why? Was it because she regretted that she didn't receive any compensation? Li Yurei finally decided to make a call. On the bed, a phone rang a few times. Walking to the bed, Mu-won, with his bared, sculpted chest, looked like he just got out of the shower. He picked up the phone to take a look. On the screen, he saw he missed a call from Li Yurei but received a follow-up text to meet up. Mu-won stepped into the restaurant and saw Li Yurei already waiting for him. He approached her and she looked at him while they both addressed each other by their first name. Mu-won said he heard that Yurei rejected his offer. She replied that's why she wanted to see him and clarify it. She wanted to tell him that she came on for business that day, not because of their personal matters. He should have seen her already. She worked for a decent company and she's living comfortably. He asked how she got the job. She replied that she reconnected with an old boss she worked with during a college internship. He asked, was the boss a man? She answered, no, but why is he asking that? Mu-won told her to quit her job. She asked for clarification. Mu-won said has she forgotten that she was once Mrs. CEO of Sung-won Company? Did she filed for divorce just to fall into a mediocre job? Li Yurei repeated, a mediocre job? Mu-won replied that the certificate of trust deposit will allow her to have a comfortable life in the U.S. If she wished, he could send her monthly living expenses. Angered, Li Yurei slammed the glass water onto the table and replied angrily that as Sung-won Company, or from Mu-won's point of view, it might look like a mediocre job, but for her, it is not like that. The job market was really tight in the U.S. Did he think it was easy for a foreigner to get a full-time position with visa sponsorship? She worked hard to earn that position. Why should she quit just because he opened his mouth? She further added for Mu-won to stop bringing up the issue again in the future. Mu-won replied he had no idea she was so glib. She replied, because he did not need to know. Suddenly, Li Yurei's phone rang. She picked up the phone while getting up. She said she was able to talk, ignoring Mu-won whom was sitting in front of him. He grabbed her hand as she walked past him, but she flung her hand off his grasp, while continuing talking on the phone that she can meet at the Taesung department store. Mu-won, looking at his empty hand, muttering to himself, was that how she wanted to play? Li Yurei arrived at the department store and asked what the staff meant. Here, the staff bowed and apologized that the head management decided to halt the signing of all new deals, so the contract cannot be made right now. The entire sales department is being affected. Li Yurei replied that the contract was being arranged by phone to be signed today. The staff apologized again. At night, Li Yurei was seen video conferencing with her boss, Julia. Julia commented that Yurei did not look too well. Li Yurei asked, what is Julia doing in the office? What about the custody lawsuit? Julia replied due to certain circumstances, she had to go into the office despite her vacation leave. Yurei asked, then. Before she could complete her sentence, Julia replied that they decided to go back to square one with launching in Korea, and Yurei should go back to the China team, as Julia is going to resign as the sales division director. Resigning? Li Yurei looked anxious. Julia explained, the loss from this case is rather big, and someone has to take responsibility. Li Yurei interrupted, was it because she was in charge of it? She? Julia replied, no, it was because she, Julia, was in charge of it. She was the one that pushed for the business in Korea, and she stepped out of the project because of personal issues. So, she is sorry. She thinks Li Yurei did her best. Yurei does not need to worry. She was one of Julia's best employee. Li Yurei clenched her fists, while Julia's words, you were one of my best employees, haunted her. She looked at her phone, thinking, did she really try her best? On the screen we can see Muwon's name on the screen. Muwon answered the phone, hello? Li Yurei asked whether she woke him up. He said he just got back from Shanghai a few hours ago. Does she need anything? She replied she needs to talk about business. Can they meet? He replied now? She said, she will meet him wherever he is at the moment. He replied, anywhere you don't mind? Even at a hotel? She said, she does not mind. He said, J Hotel, room number 3001. Li Yurei appeared at the hotel elevator heading towards Muwon's floor, thinking that this is the right thing to do. The door creaked open, and Muwon rushed out in black robes, showing his fine abs, catching Yurei off guard. He asked what is she waiting for? She should go in already. She was a head shorter and her eyes was at the height of his bared chest. Caught off guard, she stuttered and said she will come back a little later. He asked, are they strangers to each other? He encouraged her to go in. While pouring a glass of water for her, he asked what she wanted to talk about. She said it may take time, and can he please put on some clothes? He asked why, he felt okay the way he is. She replied, it was not okay with her. He said she can have a seat on the couch and wait for him then. While waiting for Muwon to change, Li Yurei felt a little awkward of the situation. She glanced around the room and asked if he was staying the hotel. What did he do with the house in Hanam-dong that he treated so dearly? Her observation was suddenly interrupted by the phone buzzing. She picked up and Mr. Lee called. She told Mr. Lee she was in the middle of an important meeting. So, she will call him back. Mr. Lee said, it is about the chaos in Taesung's sales division. It was rumored that the CEO of Sung-won department store that did it. Li Yurei asked for clarification, but Mr. Lee added if she has any idea why. Muwon approached, fully changed. She has to end the call with her Mr. Lee. As soon as she hung up, she went straight to the point. She was told that the contract with Taesung department store was suddenly cancelled and he was involved. Was it true? Vexed, he asked if that is what she wanted to talk about. She asked for an answer if he has anything to do with it. He said yes. She clenched her fists and confirmed, you did it? The past 2 days were like hell. She even came to the hotel, ignoring her own sense of worth and conscience. She asked, why he do that? He asked if she should have known the answer why he did it. Because she was not going to quit, so he had to make her quiet. And why did she come to him today? She replied, she wanted a chance. A chance to get him to reconsider the contract. He approached closer to her while placing a hand on the backrest of the couch. Why? Didn't she want to make a deal with her ex-husband? A deal? She asked. He replied, yes, since she said she wanted a chance. An employee working on a contract comes to a hotel room at this hour? Usually, they called it lobbying. Li Yurei asked, is that what he thought of her? Never once have she done anything shameful for her job. How can he say something like that? Even though they are divorced, they lived together for 2 years. She stood up abruptly, with teary eyes, glaring at Muwon. Lost for words, he tried to explain but could only utter the word, I. They were interrupted by the doorbell ringing one after another. He asked her to wait while heading towards the door. A woman wearing shades in style walked in. Muwon said he told her to call him before coming. She said she had no choice. She was in the middle of shooting. She took off her glass and noticed Li Yurei over by the couch and asked if he has a prior engagement. Muwon told her to go in. She leaned over and said sorry as she did not know. She can come back some other time. Before she could finish, Li Yurei interrupted her that she does not need to, as she was done here. She believes Mr. Choi is too. She said her goodbye. Muwon gazed her at her, muttering, Yurei. He bit his lips, frustrated, what excuses she was going to give. To someone she was already over with? Li Yurei excused herself and walked out of the hotel suite. She headed to the elevator and pressed the street floor, while dazed, thinking about why she was being treated that way. Was that how he has been thinking about her all along? And he even has someone to marry. Tears rolled down her eyes as she choked from sadness. Li Yurei grabbed a taxi, and asked the driver to take her to Carpe Diem in Cheongdam-dong. While reaching in her purse, she noticed her phone was missing. She arrived at Carpe Diem and called out for Junhee. A man, wearing glasses, was sweeping the floor. Called out, "Yurei? Isn't she Yurei Lee?" He asked for confirmation. Yurei greeted Woo Jiang in acknowledgement. Woo Jiang replied, "Long time no see," and asked, "How have she been doing?" Looking pale, as she thought she was going to find Junhee, and wasn't ready to meet him yet, but answered politely that she is doing good and where is. Before she could finish, Woo Jiang replied, if she was looking for Junhee, she finished early and left. Didn't Yurei call Junhee? Yurei replied, she did not have her phone, so she could not make a phone call. He offered if she would like to have some tea. She does not look too well. She declined and thanked for the offer, but she has to go. After she left, she ponders, she did not even think she would run into Woo Jiang. On the sofa, a phone was buzzing. Moo-won was seen reaching for the phone. On the screen, a notification was seen, a message from Julia, flight ticket to China. The phone was not even locked. On the side note, even my parents who do not even know their email has their phone locked nowadays. He browsed through her photo album. He saw her smiling happily while touring. Her delicate fingers doing a peace sign next to 2 fish cookies. Another photo of her being silly with Junhee, and one photo of her smiling contently, holding a child in her arms. He thought, she has a child? Her tastes, he did not know, her smiles, he had never seen. Was this the kind of life she wanted? That night, he stayed up all night to skim through part of her life. It reminded him of when Woo Jiang and him were joking about the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. He then made a phone call. He decided to change his states that was lingering between bargaining and depression to acceptance. He accepted the fact that his marriage was completely over. On the phone, he wanted to discuss the case of opening business contract. He made a decision, for the first time of his life, to truly wish someone happiness. A woman's heels fluttered hurriedly without a care, while a voice can be heard, following the noise of the heels, "Ms. Han, you can't." Bam, the door was slammed open while the secretary can be seen hurriedly catching up. Moo-won looked up and asked if she does not know how to knock the door. Ms. Han asked, "Glow Spa is opening up at Company A? What was the meaning of that?" He replied, it was conditional. Conditional? She asked unconvinced as she crossed her arms. He explained, the contract will be signed if Glow Spa's revenues for 2 months make it to the top 20 revenues of Fashion Hall. Ms. Han slammed her hands on the desk and shouted, even if it is conditional, why the sudden decision to let Glow Spa open, when their contract was just about to be cancelled? He replied, it was because he could not find a substitute during his business trip. She questioned, was that really it? He asked, what does she meant by that? She replied, because the personnel from Glow Spa was Yurei Lee, his ex-wife. Isn't that right? Ha, he answered. Why did she bring that up? She replied, that she mentioned it because he better draw a line between business and private matters. He countered, that he is sorry. But that was exactly what he would like to him her, Ms. Han. She approved a deal with Belga, yet they were below the cutoff in the internal production test. The fact that Belga has signed a contract should not have played a role in winning a favor. Ms. Han stuttered, unable to search for an explanation. Moo-won added, that she should not give reasons through words, but through sales. For her, to not forget the fact that Belga is also a pop-up store. In 3 months, they will see who is the one that cannot draw the line between business and private matters. They do not need anyone incapable in the Sungwon department store. Ms. Han left like a tornado, frustrated, her face scowled, looking menacingly like she had a plan. At a restaurant, overlooking the seaside, Moo-won and Woo Jiang was eating a meal together. Woo Jiang reported that Yurei dropped by the cafe yesterday. Moo-won asked, what does he mean? Woo Jiang said Yurei was looking for manager Seo, but she seemed to be unable to get a hold of her. And? Moo-won asked for more details. Woo Jiang said, what do you mean and? I'm saying Yurei is in Korea. Moo-won replied, he knew. They met already. Woo Jiang's steak piece fell on the table, trying to make sense what he just heard. What? All sorts of questions came into his mind, while Moo-won looked at him. What the hell was he thinking now? Moo-won asked why was he reacting like that? He's seen Hai-won too. Woo Jiang replied, why is Moo-won comparing them? Hai-won and him have known each other for 20 years. On the other hand, Moo-won did not know anything about Yurei recently. Mu1 replied calmly, Yurei is the sales representative for spa brand. That was how they met. Surprised, Wu Jiang asked, the quiet, little Yurei? Mu1 said, she seems to have taken the project since there was a conflict with Sungwon department store. Wu Jiang finally understood, since her major was fashion marketing? He heard business in China was tough. Mu1 replied, he didn't even know where Wu Jiang got info on her college major? He replied, because he asked, and she answered. Did Mu1 not know? Mu1 answered, he only heard that she graduated from Parsons. Wu Jiang in her thoughts, that is why Mu1 got divorced. While chowing down on his food, he replied, of course, you know that. He thought Mu1's life is like a soap opera. The conversation continued as they went to ring up. Mu1 handed his credit card to the register staff. Wu Jiang asked, why Mu1 do not even know the title of the soap opera Sungwon department store is sponsoring? Mu1 replied, the contract was signed a while ago by Mrs. Yoon. Wu Jiang was not buying it. The show was very popular these days. He added, the drama is about a divorced couple just like Mu1 and Yurei, who got back together and start their second-round romance. Mu1, trying to run away from the chatter. Wu Jiang, thinking, second round of romance? Cut it out. Just as Wu Jiang was about to explain about the male protagonist, Mu1 stopped and asked if Wu Jiang heard anything from Jun Hee-seo. What? Wu Jiang replied. About Yuri Lee's present husband, answered Mu1. Wu Jiang said, even if Mu1 think he is an idiot, does Mu1 think he would mention Yurei's name to manager Seo? Mu1 took out the phone and read, it says here that she's not married and has no child. Surprised, Wu Jiang questioned if Mu1 is checking up on Yurei Lee. Without answering to the question, Mu1 excused himself and took off, leaving his friend speechless. Wu Jiang do not know why he got divorced in the first place if he was going to act like that. What a fool. In the CEO's office, Mu1 asked his secretary if the secretary had any contact from the Glow Spa. The secretary replied, not yet. The staff in charge had her phone turned off, and because of the time difference between them and Glow Spa's headquarters, is causing a delay in response. Mu1 excused his secretary. He thought it was strange. A sales representative would not take so long to respond. He thought he saw her room number on her cell phone. Mu1 made a phone call and requested to talk to the guest in room 505, and if the staff can connect him to the line. The staff on the other line answered that the guest in the room was transported to the hospital in an ambulance. Mu1 felt as if his world shattered. He asked why, and corrected himself. No, he meant, what hospital she is in. At the hospital, Mu1 ran like his life depends on it. He finally reached her bed and moved the curtains, while huffing. There, laying on the hospital bed, Yurei laid quietly, flushed from the illness. A nurse asked if he was a family member. He replied, yes, and what happened? The nurse answered, she had stomach cramps. The doctor in charge will be there in a minute to talk about her condition. He asked, what is the cause? She replied, it could be from many things. Usually, it is caused by excessive stress, extreme fatigue, and drinking. It dawned on Mu1 that she has all of them. The nurse asked, how is he related to the patient? He replied, he is her husband. She asked if he, then, can fill out the forms at the reception desk? He went to the desk and filled out the patient history form. In the relationship, he wrote down husband. He thought, the word her husband came out just like that, easily. It felt like they are a real married couple. Back in the patient room, the doctor arrived and reported that she has a high fever. So, they first need to wait and see until the fever is gone. The doctor asked for him to call if he needed anything. Mu1 thanked the doctor. He sat by Yurei's bedside, gazing gently at her and noticed the scar on her hand. Yurei slowly opened her eyes and saw 2 hanging bottles on the IV pole. She quickly noticed she is in a hospital room. The nurse noticed and asked if she is awake. The fever is gone, but how is the pain? She replied, it is fine. The nurse instructed her to wait a minute. The doctor will be there soon. Yurei sat up and asked if she can use a phone. She wanted to call her family. The nurse replied, if she was talking about her husband, he already finished the paperwork. Surprised, as she currently does not have a husband. The nurse continued that her husband was really worried because she had a high fever. He would not leave Yurei's side. What a loving husband. Husband? She felt confused, and asked again if she could use a phone. Yurei went to the reception, hauling the IV pole with her to make a phone call to Junhee. She reported her situation and the hospital info. Suddenly, someone called her name, Yurei. She turned around and saw Muwon. He asked if she is feeling better. She had a stomach cramp, the flu, and muscle pains. She asked, how did he know? He replied, she left her cell phone at his place. Back to the hospital bed, he said, there was an urgent matter to discuss with her. So, he wanted to give back the cell phone. One of the ER staff answered the phone. He reached down his shirt pocket and handed her the phone. She asked why did he bring the phone? A female doctor called, Yurei Lee? She replied, here. The doctor asked if Yurei has gastritis? She answered, yes. The doctor recommended a gastroscopy, eat regular meals, and absolutely abstain from any alcohol. Turning to Muwon, she told him to take care of his wife in every way. Muwon asked if there is anything else that he should be aware of. Yurei stared at Muwon and the doctor, conversing back and forth, and thought, Muwon Choi is my husband? She then remembers the nurse from earlier. Said how he would not leave her side, and what a loving husband he is. Muwon brought his gaze to Yurei and asked, her face is a bit flushed. Is she feeling feverish? Being caught staring at Muwon, she felt flustered but quickly denied. He reached his hand out to her face and landed on her forehead to feel the temperature. He said, she was not all right. She still has a fever. She should wait while he go get the doctor again. She abruptly denied, no, she's okay, while brushing his hand off her forehead. She proceeded to ask, what was so urgent that he needed to contact her? He replied, he will withdraw the termination of the contract with Glow Spa. Confused, she asked what he meant? He said the offer is conditional and to contact the headquarters for the details. Since they could not reach her, they reported to the Glow Spa headquarters in the US. She asked, but why now? He replied, didn't she go to see him because of that? She answered, that was when she did not know he was the hidden figure behind the Taesung department case. He asked nonchalantly, does it matter now? Didn't she told him to draw a line between personal and business? If she does not hit the top sales goals, she is out on the spot. She was not sure why he is offering such an opportunity now, when he downright said no the last time. While they were staring stalemate at each other, they were interrupted by Junhee. She asked them what happened? Why are they two together? Yurei quickly denied and explained they were actually dealing with a complicated business matter. Junhee asked, what kind of complicated business matter is it? Muwon said he withdrew their Sungwon department store's contract termination. That's why he contacted. Before he finished, Yurei cut him off. Mr. Choi, why don't he leave for now? And thank him for today, but since Junhee is here, he must be busy. She will call the department store later directly. Upset, he stared at her and they had a stalemate look at each other while Junhee stood between, looking confused at their nonverbal gazes. Seeing Muwon not budging, Junhee amplify, didn't he hear? He should go and do not worry about Yurei since she will take Yurei home personally. Muwon finally replied that she should hurry. The company called already. They had an internal meeting and started working on the logistics. With that, he adjusted his shirt and left. Junhee complained, what is wrong with him? Yurei stared at his retreating back, thinking of the moment when she was unconscious on the bed. She thought she was dreaming, but he gently caressed her face and said he was sorry. The next day, fresh meats, protein, fruits, and candies were delivered to Junhee's house. She looked at all those delicacies that glittered like gold in front of her and guessed happily of its price. $500? No, $1,000? Or more. Yurei arrived home from work. She took her shoes off and went straight to the fridge. Junhee asked her to look at the delivery, but noticing Yurei gulping down water straight from the bottle, Junhee shouted, hey, don't drink from the bottle. But Yurei already finished drinking. Junhee asked, did something happen? Are they saying you can't have the business again? Opening our stores is not an issue. Then are you going back to China? No, I can't. Yurei replied. Suddenly, Yurei noticed all the delicacies. She asked, did you do some shopping? That? No, I didn't buy them. Your ex-husband did. Yurei sighed, Muwon? Junhee explained, someone called Secretary Kim brought it, and told me it was in return for the tomato juice. I wonder how they found out my home address. While the phone was dialing, Yurei told Junhee that Muwon can find out anything. Geez, I really don't understand your ex-husband. Same here. Yurei concurred. There was no answer on the line and her call was forwarded to an automatic voice messaging. Yurei had a flashback a few hours prior. At Sungwon department store, Yurei was looking through some contract documents. As stated in the document, this contract is conditional upon the sales. We will sign the contract if their revenues for 3 months make it to the top 20 of Fashion Hall. The other condition is that Yurei take charge of running the store. Junhee slammed her fists on the table, angered. Why the condition? Yurei replied, they say the contract doesn't start until after the first 3 months, so the initial contractor must take charge of the store. What's the problem then? Junhee asked. To Yurei, one thing was crystal clear. The one filling the house with useless thing, the one who stopped her from going to China, the one who was cold and then kind, the one who does whatever he feels like, are all the same person, Mu Choi. With the store set to open in a week, there were tons of things to take care of. Yurei seemed to be discussing with hiring a store manager. Well, have you found a manager? I can share the info on the opening day, asked one of the planning employees. No, I'm still waiting to hear back. The man replied, that's a problem. You have a lot to take care of for the opening. Shall I ask our partners if they have any referrals? Ah, yes, that would be very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. Please feel free to reach out whenever you run into any issues with the store. Ms. Yurei, the executive department head Han wants you to stop by her office. The executive department head? She asked. At Haisa Han's office, Yurei announced her arrival. Director Han invited Yurei in. Yurei Lee? She called. It's nice to meet you. I'm Yurei Lee from Glow Spa. She introduced herself to Director Han but felt she looked familiar. Director Han introduced herself, her position and stated that she has heard of Yurei Lee a couple of times. But it's the first time she's seen Yurei in person. She asked if Yurei wants some tea, which Yurei declined. Yurei sat on the couch, across from Director Han, and asked if there is a problem with their brand. Instead of answering the question, Director Han stated that she is personally curious about Yurei. Pardon? Yurei asked. Anyway, you are much more ordinary than I expected. You used to be part of Sungwon Company. So, I expected something unique about you. Huh? The confused Yurei does not know what all these has to do with the current job. She answered, I'm sorry. But I don't understand what you're trying to say. Director Han explained, I had to do some research since my family is working on an arranged marriage and it's my future spouse's past. Since he had already been married once, there's a lot to take care of too. Suddenly, Yurei remembered the dinner event at the restaurant with the Taesung team. Director Han was the woman who accompanied Mu-won in the Japanese sushi place that day. The first daughter of CEO Han, the chairman Han Jae-wool Company. Now she understood the situation. Director Han asked Yurei, do you watch soap operas? There's one called The Wife Has Returned. It is the highest rated drama right now. Yurei replied, I've only heard of it. Honestly, I don't. I'm not into it, but people are raving about its plot of a divorced couple reuniting. With everything that happens with divorce, it's obviously not a good thing. But you would know it well, right, Ms. Lee? You've been in those shoes, said Director Han. Lee Yurei looked at her warily. Director Han would like to hear what Lee Yurei actually has to say. Lee Yurei didn't reply. So, Director Han stopped beating around the bush and went straight to the point. She asked Lee Yurei, you don't intend to remarry President Choi, right? I know Yusung Corporation is facing some challenges. The president was arrested 3 years ago and business under Ms. Lee's management failed one after another, resulting in financial crunch. If that played a role in bringing about a reunion. Lee Yurei clenched her hands as what Director Han said was quite unpleasant to the ear, and replied, no. A reunion won't happen even if I want it, and I have no intention to reunite. As you should already know from my background check, I have nothing to do with Yusung Corporation anymore. It ended around the time as my divorce. If you object to my working with Sungwon Department Store, please talk to Mr. Choi directly. It was his decision to designate me as the person in charge. Since our business is done here, I will get going. Yurei had a flashback of the last day of jury deliberation. Her father sitting behind the cell talking to her through the window. Don't worry about me. Do what you want. And please stop pressuring yourself. She put her hand on the glass and called, Father. Her father could have avoided the arrest if they received the help from the Sungwon Corporation. The bitterness of that time was almost brought back, and how her father's story almost broke her heart. Yurei came out of the elevator and met Secretary Kim in front of the elevator. He greeted her and asked how she is doing. Surprised, but she greeted him out of courtesy. What brought you here? Secretary Kim answered, he went to find her but was told she went to see the department head. So he was on his way to see her. President Choi wants to dine with her. Dine? She questioned. It took so much to settle down again and start anew. Why does he keep trying to start something? Yu declined the dinner invitation and stated that she is a staff from a contractor. So please, let President Choi know she appreciate the contract, but this level of interest is uncomfortable for her. With that, she walked away, leaving Secretary Kim flustered. Won was eating a meal with a man, but seemed distracted. The man asked if the dish is not to his taste. He replied that he is not feeling well. The man stated he should have pushed the meeting to another day. In fact, Vice President Yoon Lee is dining there, too. He guessed today is not Won's lucky day. He's something you would much rather avoid, right? Won answered, he certainly isn't someone I want to see. Was he accompanied by girls again? Won thought, that guy is crazy about women and gambling. Of course, he wants to avoid him. The other man replied, oh, thank God, no. He seems to have just come with investors today. He's not in a situation to gamble. Surprised, Won asked, investors? What? No gambling this time? The man explained, after President Lee's arrest for Start Road, the debt collectors started to make their demands, right? You also cut off funding after the breakup. It managed avoiding the receivership by procuring foreign capital, but the repayment day is coming up soon. Since Yusung Corporation isn't capable of paying it back now, it's being very cautious with the investors. Won pondered, if that guy's being cautious, then the situation must be grave, so, if I were to go out with Yu again? He asked the man, could you look into Yusung Corporation's current situation, President? Sure, I can. The man replied. Secretary Kim reported to Won what Yu said, that she is a contractor and this level of interest was making her uncomfortable. Won sat in the car, and palmed his forehead as he thought of the message relayed to him from earlier. Really? Seeing her again? Wake up. He is all too familiar with what a rejection meant, especially after that strained relationship with his father, and also when taught retreat in order to minimize the degree of pain and hurt he would feel. He then noticed a man, standing, not too far in front of his car, gazing at a certain direction. He remembered. It's the guy he saw with Yu. 4 days later, the man's face lingered in Won's mind. He even searched her socials, but couldn't find anything special. Holding the phone, looking at Yu's Instagram post of Glow Spa, a man named Taeho replied to her post. Taeho, could it be Taeho Kim? The assistant manager in the sales department. Won was so distracted, his secretary called out to him a couple times before he came around to reality. Ah, yes. The secretary reported, Belga started its display work and the construction for Glow Spa will be completed today. But Glow Spa is still looking for its manager. Won questioned, it's opening in a few days and it still hasn't hired a manager? The secretary answered, apparently, it hasn't drawn many applicants, because the store is conditional, and the revenue expectation are set high. The secretary spoke proudly of his action, but please do not worry. I have placed a special request with our executive department staff, so it will be taken care of well. Won slammed his fist on the table, why did you do something that I did not order? Shocked, the secretary answered, pardon me, sire. I thought you care a lot, for the Glow Spa shop. Who says I care? The secretary got nervous and screamed inwardly, you even stayed after office hours, just walking around the renovation site for Glow Spa. Won lectured, you've been working for a large company for several years now, and yet you cannot differentiate between private and public matters? Do you intend to advertise everywhere that the Glow Spa contractor is your CEO's ex-wife? Warn the executive department staff to keep their nose out of this. Yes, replied the secretary sulkily. Won sighed, why are all these men attracted to this woman? It was nightfall. The city lights flickered behind the large glass window. Won was still sitting in his office, unable to concentrate at all. He finally decided to go home first. At times like these, it's better to head to bed. When he walked out of the elevator, he saw a group of employees chattering about where to go for dinner. He noticed Yu among them too and wondered what's happening. Director Han asked if he was already going home. Yes, what's going on? He asked. Director Han stated, it's the sales management department's dinner. They're also doing introduction to familiarize themselves. Is that so? He asked, but glancing at Yu. Even though the doctor said to not drink alcohol, is she still going to eat with them? He told Director Han if so, then, he would like to join as well. Confused, Director Han asked, Mr. Mu-won wants to join us? Why are you looking at me like that? He thought. Yurei was barbecuing some pork strips and cutting them, while thinking, all of the employees here were forced to come, and she heard that Mu-won usually doesn't go to these dinners, so why is he here today? Yurei sobbed inwardly, at how uncomfortable the situation is. Someone called, Miss Yurei. Here, I'll do it. Ah yes, I'm sorry. I'm not used to doing this. No worries, I couldn't at first either. Please eat. You've been sizzling it this whole time and haven't eaten yet, right? Yurei thanked the other employee. She replied silently to herself, I'm in the same room as my ex-husband and his girlfriend. How could I eat? She suddenly felt so hot. Ah, damn, pretend you didn't see him. Mu-won kept staring at Yurei's back from the distance. Director Han asked to pour a drink for Mu-won. Yurei thought of leaving quietly, but then, someone put their hand on her shoulder. Which company are you from? Ah, I am Lee Yurei from Pilo, while thinking who is this man? The man laughed heartily, ah, right. Miss Lee Yurei. Your glass is empty. She told him she does not drink alcohol. He snarled, can't drink or don't want to. He is the management team head, Choi Min-chul. Is this the guy they call the new company disciplinarian? Yurei explained, she can't drink alcohol. The doctor forbade her from drinking. She asked if she can pour a drink for him instead. The colleague sitting across stated, Miss Yurei is not feeling well. Let him drink in her stead. The management team head reprimanded, Deputy Kim doesn't need to follow along. 1 or 2 glasses will be fine. Why are you being so stiff, Then he fussed, the employee of the partner company doesn't want to accept the drinks I pour. Yurei thought, if I don't accept it now, he will definitely be troublesome for the next 3 months. Not only that, but I might also get targeted. She complied, just a little bit then. Finally happy, the management team head stated, there we go. One shouldn't be too rigid. Well, let me pour. Suddenly his bottle was grabbed by Mu-won. Didn't she already say she can't drink? Startled, Mr. CEO. Mu-won chastised, didn't you know that forcing people to drink is a form of violence? Management team head made an excuse, it's not like that, because my subordinates were too stiff. Mu-won scolded, subordinate? It's amazing that you take the employee of a partner company as your subordinates. So, has the head of the management team been thinking of the employees of partner companies like that? Management team head stuttered, it's not like that. I didn't do it on purpose. Mu-won questioned, not on purpose? Which part of that was said accidentally? I have spoken wrongly. He can only accept his wrongdoing. Mu-won announced clearly in front of everyone. Partner companies are not subordinates, but clients. Then in the future, when you choose a ready-to-eat barbecue restaurant, do not ask your clients to sizzle it. Director Han interrupted, Mr. Mu-won, it looks like Chief Choi is drunk. This is supposed to be a fun event, so please don't be angry anymore. I will remind Chief Choi later. Yurei thought, why did he help her? Has he been watching over her? Director Han and Mu-won went back to sit at their seats, but she was glaring at Yurei. Yurei sighed and know her future will be troublesome. She excused herself to go to the bathroom. When she entered the bathroom, she heard other ladies gossiping. Mr. CEO is so cool I could never divorce him. So, what if he's divorced? He doesn't have any children, right? True, a CEO with a perfect look. Oh right, he said that the pervert from the department head of sales at the Taesung department store was fired. Yeah. He said the pervert got caught looking at a female employee of a partner company. It seems like they back up the employees a lot, right? I heard that the head of the department is related to the owner of Taesung. Yurei leaning against the toilet door, listening to the gossips. Female employees of a partner companies. Like, me? Don't tell me the reason he discussed compensation and to quit my job was because of this. Yurei went to wash her hands but her thoughts continued. Even though he has a fiancé and says I'm not his type, why is he interfering with my problems? Because of his pride? It must be. He wouldn't be happy if his ex-wife got into some trouble. Yurei came back and heard others mentioned that the CEO left. Yurei went back to her table and excused herself for the night. Outside, she is looking at her phone, looking for taxi when Mu-won asked if she is done with her meal. Outside the restaurant, Yurei asked why Mu-won hadn't left yet. Mu-won answered, he pretended to leave because it seemed she was getting sick of seeing him. Yurei thought he left with Director Han, but evidently, he didn't. But why? He seemed strange. Mu-won seemed unsteady to Yurei. He seems strange. Mu-won, perhaps. Before she could complete her sentence, he leaned onto her. Left with no choice, she could only help steady him. She asked if he was okay. He touched her arm, smiled, and replied coyly, yes. She noticed that he seemed drunk, so she asked if he was drunk. Mu-won told her he was not drunk as he grabbed her hand. She asked where Secretary Kim was while attempting to put a distance between them. Mu-won told her that Secretary Kim already went home. Then, let me call someone to drive you home. Wait here for a minute. Yurei instructed. Mu-won tightened his grip and asked her to not go. He inched closer to her and said, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Unable to deal with a drunkard, Yurei had no choice but to drive Mu-won home. When they arrived, she nudged him, but he wouldn't budge. She nudged him again and told him they had arrived. She wondered if he really fell asleep. Same result as usual, he doesn't hear her. Frustrated, what should she do? People are still working in this house, right? She got out of the car and observed the house they lived together in the past. It's been a long time since she last saw this place. Yurei pressed the doorbell many times, but there was no answer. She cannot leave him in front of the house, and she cannot take him to the hotel either. She went back to the car and searched for Mu-won's phone. She found his phone in his pocket. Thankfully, the login was his fingerprint. Yurei reached for his finger and noticed he has big hands. How did she not notice it until now? Isn't that natural? Within the 2 years together, she never even held his hands. They were just husband and wife, in papers. Yurei searched Mu-won's contact log for Secretary Kim's number. She found her own contact in his phone, and she was saved as wife. Her heart fluttered as she wondered if that name wife was what he saved in the past or now. Yurei dialed Secretary Kim. She apologized for calling this late. What? Miss Lee Yurei? Secretary Kim screamed, surprisingly through the other line. This is Mu-won's number. You're with Mu-won? Why are you together at this hour? He asked one question after another. Yurei replied, there was a company dinner, and Mu-won won't wake up because he was drunk. She is in front of his house in Hanam-dong, but it seemed like there was no one inside. Ah. The interior is being renovated, that's why President is staying at a hotel right now. I'll be there soon, explained Secretary Kim. Yurei now understood, he did not call her to that hotel on purpose. The Taesung department store affairs, and team head, and the reason why he's still keeping the name of his ex-wife as wife, when in fact they already divorced 3 years ago. She started to connect the dots. Slowly, she reached her hand to touch his face, gently, asking to herself, what were you thinking? Mu-won finally opened his eyes, which surprised Yurei, and she instantly withdrew her hand. You're awake? Mu-won? Gazing at Yurei, not sure if it was a dream or reality, Mu-won reached out to grab her face and pulled her in for a passionate kiss. Yurei tried to push him, but he just kissed her deeper to the point where she cannot breathe. He wouldn't just let her go, and she could only stop struggling. At one point, when her mind was in a haze and she was all breathless, why was she being reminded of her old memories? The memories she remembers every time she kissed this man. After some time, Mu-won finally let her go. She blushed and covered her mouth, thinking she must have gone crazy. Mu-won is drunk, but she isn't, so why did she? While she was battling internally, Mu-won spoke softly, I miss you. I still like you, even if you already have someone else. I love you. Yurei was lost for words. Who does he think he's confessing to? Was it that woman back then? She clenched her hands and stepped outside the door. Is it a one-sided love? Apparently, he can be sincere when he wants to. She sighed, even though they're already divorced, it's still hard hearing your ex-husband love confession for someone else. Yurei's mind flashed of the woman she met when visiting Mu-won at the hotel. Unable to contain her emotions, she stepped outside to get some fresh airs while waiting. Secretary Kim finally arrived, Miss Lee Yurei. Yurei apologized for bothering him so late. Secretary Kim chuckled. No, he should be the one to apologize. He's not really a drinker. How much did he drink? Yurei replied, it looks like he drank all of the liquor poured by his employees. Confused, Secretary Kim explained, usually he is good at limiting himself. Did something happen today? Normally, he doesn't drink more than what his body can handle. Yurei is not sure either. Secretary Kim asked for the car key. He will drive Moo-won home, and since Yurei lives in Miss Jun-hee's house, she can take the cab that he took. Yurei sat in the taxi, but the confession, I love you, lingers in her mind non-stop. She told herself, she has to forget about it. The next day, Moo-won woke up to Secretary Kim standing on the side, holding a coffee cup. Moo-won asked, what happened? Secretary Kim answered, you don't remember? I came right after Miss Yurei called me. Yurei. I don't know the details either. Since you were drunk, she took you to Hanam-dong. But she found no one in there, so she called me using your phone. Moo-won, hung over, clutched his stomach. I think I remember. Why? Does your stomach hurts? There is a restaurant that serves hangover soup nearby, let's go there. Moo-won does not want soup and asked for tomato juice. Tomato? Perhaps there is one at the cafe below. Please make me a tomato juice, mixed with 1 spoon of honey. Moo-won requested. Secretary Kim walked away and muttered, you asked for weird things, you know. Moo-won thought of the event the night before and realized that there would be such chaos between the department head store and the partner companies. Also, the disciplinary action he took towards them at the dinner of the welcoming event party. His anger just erupted after seeing Yurei got into trouble in front of him. He wondered what happened after that. Yurei supporting him to the car. Even so, she still cares about him, seeing that she went to such lengths just to take him home. Secretary Kim came back with tomato juice and asked, you don't remember what happened yesterday, do you? Why? What happened? You guys kissed inside the car. Moo-won spat out the full gulp of tomato juice. What kind of nonsense is that? I did what in the car? Secretary Kim wiped himself with a handkerchief and said, you kissed Miss Yurei inside your car. When I took a taxi to your house, I saw the two of you kissing. To avoid making Miss Yurei embarrassed, I made the driver turn twice circling around the area. Moo-won recalled vivid glimpses of the kiss, but felt like there should be something more. He suddenly asked for his car key. What? Where the hell is my car key? Moo-won demanded. Outside in the parking lot, Moo-won stood at the driver's side, adjusting his shirt before getting in the car. He quickly adjusted the dashboard camera and saw the whole scene. She reached out her hands to touch his face, he woke up and pulled her in for a kiss. After the kiss, he confessed his love to her. Beep! His car's horn screamed just as loud as his heart. Damn it! Cursed the flustered Moo-won. A female employee came running, shouting, it's crazy, it's crazy. Many people are lining up in front of the Belga shop already. What's wrong? Asked Secretary Kim. It's the second day of opening for Belga and Pilo. How's Pilo doing? The female employee explained, it's not that bad, but people are gathering at Belga because of Janie Hai-won's fan meeting tickets. Isn't it too much? Jang Hai-won is a star model, yet she's handing out tickets on Belga's opening. This is unfair for Pilo who has the same opening day. Secretary Kim deducted, is it because their CEO has been down lately? He remembers when he greeted the CEO but CEO didn't notice his existence and walked blankly. Or when he declined eating with them or when he's taking his leave. He just had that blank, depressed look all around. Secretary Kim stated, their CEO has been very disappointed since the company dinner 4 days ago. Come check the department store with me. Moo-won ordered from behind, shocking Secretary Kim. Mr. CEO? Let's go. Moo-won ordered. Panicked, the male employee thought, they don't usually pay a visit to stores other than to welcome buyers, do they? In the elevator, Moo-won still couldn't get the kissed and confession out of his mind. I must be crazy. We kissed. Let's just pretend it never happened. Anyways, we were once married, after all. Moo-won sighed, but how could I say something like that to her? What's more insulting, is that after what happened, it seems like she's avoiding me. I'm not a very patient man. My very first love confession after 34 years of living was ignored just like that. Moo-won noticed a line of people lining to go into Belga. Welcome to Pil. Yurei stopped halfway when she noticed who her customers are. She greeted him as Mr. CEO and asked what business he has in their store. Mu-won caught how she addressed him, Mr. CEO, as if nothing happened. Do I need a reason to come to the store? Of course, it's to buy clothes. Yu-rei questioned, Mr. CEO, wants to buy clothes here? Secretary Kim stated, buying stuff in a new store has always been a custom in Sungwon. She asked if there is any model he preferred. He replied, he wanted the most expensive one. After all, the value of sales is the most important thing, right? Yu-rei answered, of course it's important, but for us, it's more important that the customers love our products. How about this one? She suggested. Because the color is neutral, it won't be difficult to mix and match this with the clothes that you already have. For this design. The whole time while Yu-rei was explaining, Mu-won could only focus on her delicious lips. As he just kept staring at her without any reaction, she stopped and asked if there is a problem. His mind went haywire. Problem? Yes, and it's a very big one. Am I the only one who thinks about the kiss? Am I the only one who's not calm? Mu-won replied, nothing. Secretary Kim, you should buy one too. Okay. Secretary Kim cried as he could only comply. Secretary Kim asked nervously, what clothes suit me best, while Mu-won radiating angry auras. If you don't mind, I want to recommend a cardigan. This is our main collection for this season. What do you think? Alright then. Yu-rei asked for the size. Secretary Kim replied, he does not know his size since it's his wife who usually buys clothes for him. Very well, she will bring out the measurement tape. Mu-won could only watch as anger kept boiling up. She didn't smile at me, but she's smiling at Secretary Kim? Customers started coming into the shop and one man bumped into the stacked boxes behind Yu-rei. Within a blink of an eye, the boxes fell forward to Yu-rei, but someone was faster. A man shielded her from the falling boxes. He asked if she was okayed. It's been a long time, Yu-rei. Do you nappa? Mu-won noticed he was the man from back then. Yu-rei was in the shop alone, looking at Du-yun's business card. He is no longer working as a prosecutor. Yu-rei grabbed her phone and started texting Du-yun Appa. She first met him when she was 12 years old. He was the only one who has been nice to her since she was in Songbukdong. They texted back and forth, catching up on life and what they have been up to. Via text she told Du-yun that she was only working on short term. Du-yun replied, he was relieved. He was going to stop her from working there because he heard the CEO is weird. Huh, weird? Yu-rei thought. She had a flashback of Mu-won wanting Du-yun to go to the office to solve the problem completely, even though Du-yun said he was fine. She wondered if something happened in the office. How should she reply? You didn't go home yet? What are you doing? Asked Mu-won. Mr. CEO? Mu-won told her not to call him Mr. CEO when it's just the two of them. She asked what business he has. Do I need a reason to walk around my own department store? What are you still doing here in this hour? She stated that she is fixing the damaged boxes from the afternoon. He questioned that she won't even sell them. Why does she have to go this far? Yu-rei sighed, and scolded to herself, says the one who has never bought a souvenir in his life. She explained, this has nothing to do with money. She is doing this so the person receiving the souvenir will be happy. Even if it's a freebie, no one would want a damaged good. Yu-rei proceeded to her work. She sat down and started fixing, organizing the boxes. Mu-won couldn't help it and he followed suit. She asked what is he doing? He asked back if she is going to do all these alone. Does she want to pull an all-nighter? She questioned if he is trying to help her. He asked, why? Does she not like it? Well, she wanted to tell him to just go home, but she started to instruct him how to assemble the boxes. Put the freebies in the larger boxes. The smaller boxes are for the socks, and one is pouch. And the big one is neck pillows. Just as she said this, she knows he often goes on business trips. Should she give him one? She asked him if he wanted a neck pillow. What? Do I look like someone who helps by expecting a souvenir in return? Alright, then. That was not her intention, it's useless. Mu-won started a conversation. He asked what's her relationship with the guy from earlier. Do you mean Du-yun Appa? Yes, that's the guy named Kong Du-yun. Why do you call him Appa? Isn't your big brother only Lee Yu-hyun? He is Mr. King's son, who has always been helping my family. She explained, confused where the conversation is heading. How did you become so close with the head secretary's son? Because he often visits us and he's Yuhyun Appa's friend. So, he's your brother's friend. Yurei, feeling tired of being interrogated, pondered why he asks too many questions. She grazed her fingers with the blade while looking at him. Muwon suddenly reached over to grab her hand, to look at the cut. He sighed in relief, after noticing the wound is not too deep. At that moment, she can feel her own heart beating. He asked, why does her hand have bruises? Ah, it's because that time you. Did I do that? She turned away and said, it's fine if you don't remember. You held it too tight. Feeling uncomfortable, he loosened his ties a bit. It was getting tense in the room. Muwon said, about what happened that day. Yurei clenched her hands and stated, she has no problem with that. She hopes he thinks so, too. He was very drunk that day. It's only natural for him to make mistakes. What? So you only think it's a mistakes? He stood up and said, your answer is too evil. Don't overwork yourself. With that, he turned his back towards her and left. She pondered, did she say something wrong? His back at this moment reminded her of the court day, their divorce. Why would she still remember his back from that day? His back looked so tough, and yet lonely. The next day, Duyun Appa visited the shop again. Yurei asked what is he doing there? Duyun replied, there is something he wanted to buy, and he is still worried about yesterday's problem. Their conversation was suddenly cut off. Yurei apologized because she was still working. You worked overtime? Yurei laughed, since it was the opening, it's been really busy. If I'm not mistaken, yesterday, you said you wanted to buy a present, right? For who? For my father. Father? She questioned. Ah, sorry, you haven't heard, but not long ago my mother remarried. Yurei was reminded of Star Road incident. It made her remember all the things she wanted to forget. The man who held responsible for the fire at Star Road construction and ended up ending his own life, was Leader Kong, father of Duyun Appa. Yurei suggested, if it's a present for his father, a cardigan would be suitable. What does he do? Duyun replied that he works in a pharmacy near their house. A pharmacist? How about a pair of comfy sandals to work inside the room? Yurei reached for the sandals on the shelf. That'll work, too. I will take whatever you choose. Replied Duyun. Okay. She smiled cheerfully at him. In the car, Duyun looked at the souvenir, smilingly, thinking it's his first time buying. He never thought they would meet again like this. His father, who started his career as a driver and finally got his position as the lead secretary, was a very hardworking man. He respected his father very much. A flashback when his father was driving, his father asked if they can eat ribs meat some other time. Why? The young Duyun asked. Dad has to go. There's some problem with the president's child. Explained his father. No, cannot do. Shouldn't a father prioritize his promise to his own son? Young Duyun rejected. His dad, who was busy working, as the caretaker of the Yusung Company family, made the young him get angry. His father asked, the place is a bit far, do you want to come with? He nodded, but he cursed that president's child throughout their way to Gangneung, thinking that when they met later, he must beat that problematic child up. It's better if he caused some problem and made his father quit. He humphed. We're here. You should wait for a sec, said his father. He wanted to see who the problematic child is, but the child, who was standing in front of the house, in the middle of a snowstorm, wasn't a problematic child as they said, but a little girl who was crying, calling for her mother. Back in the car with the child sleeping in the back seat, Duyun asked his father, didn't you say the president only has one child? Not too long ago, he had another child, answered his father. Did she fall from the sky? How can he suddenly have another child? She has a different mother. At that moment, he thought he knew the reason why she was crying and calling for her mother. If that's the case, then did her mom throw her out? He asked his father. Adults have their own problem. You shouldn't say those things to other people, alright? He pretended to understand what his father meant by adults' problem. Even he was just an immature junior high school student, he felt sympathy for her. And probably he still do. Duyun arrived at the pharmacy. He greeted his father and asked how his father is doing. His father replied he is great. And has he eaten dinner? His father told him since the morning, his mother has been busy cooking japchae and seasoned ribs, as if there's a big event in the neighborhood. Duyun sniffed and replied, That's why he can smell the tasty aroma coming from the second floor. Upstairs, his mom told him happily that she will arrange the food. Duyun told her to take her time. At the dinner table, Duyun gave his father the sandals. He accepted it happily. It was a very warm family dinner. After dinner, his father asked if he called a taxi yet. Duyun replied, his employee will pick him up. Okay then, wanna take a stroll? The father and son took a stroll together. Duyun asked, Father, how did you feel when you met my mom again, after all these years? You both have known each other since a long time ago, right? His father answered happily, even if it seems like an excuse, in my eyes, your mom still looks like the little girl with twin pigtails. Amazing, Duyun commented. Today, I met someone I knew from when I was a child. I was surprised when I found her to be the same. I like her, he confessed. His father suggested, if you truly like her, why don't you ask her out? I can't tell whether this is a feeling of nostalgia or if I truly like her. Feelings aren't something you can easily distinguish. His father replied, life is only once and the same change might not come to you again. That's why you have to let it flow. Duyun was staring out the window thinking of his conversation with his father. He glanced at the neck pillow, reached out to it and put it on. He asked himself if he should try. One only live once. The driver reported, Executive Director Lee Yu-hyun has begun to move. Where to? Duyun asked for more information. It looks like he is going to meet the President Kim of Itaewon. So, there's still someone willing to lend money to Lee? The driver reported, it looks like they're connected to the Songbuk-dong madam. Duyun asked the driver to turn the car around. He is going to meet that President Kim, himself. He invested 2 years into this already. He is going to make sure he goes all out. In the private dining room at a restaurant, Moo-won stated, I didn't know you had a prior engagement. Chairman Han sitting at the end welcomed President Choi and said he didn't have a prior engagement, but his guy is waiting for his company, so he lets the guy join him. Why don't they introduce themselves? Moo-won said he know the guy. Haven't we met, Duyun Kong? How do you do? Duyun greeted. Chairman Han asked, where have you two met? Duyun answered, recently at the department store. There was a little issue at a store. What, a CEO cares about a store? Duyun explained, it was no big deal. Just a small safety issue. But, it was surprising to see a CEO like Moo-won so interested in a vendor. Moo-won sat down. Enough talk about me. How do you know Duyun Kong, Chairman Han? Chairman Han said they met in the past. Actually, this fella, Director Kong, once worked as an attorney. He was in charge of finance cases. Even though he was a fledgling attorney, he had the audacity to enter my office with a warrant. I expected he would make it to the top at the prosecutor's office, so now I am sorry to hear he quit. Moo-won thought, it's impressive to hear that he is an attorney. Duyun excused himself to Chairman Han since Chairman Han's party has arrived. Leaving already? Asked Duyun, while leisurely smoking. Moo-won replied, it ended earlier than he expected. Duyun stated he left something in his car. Moo-won saw that Duyun got the same car as his. Should he change his car? So, you used to be an attorney? How are you related to Chairman Han? Why are you asking? Chairman Han told me you are his son-in-law to be. Moo-won rejected, that trash. Still trying to use my name? He told Duyun, that's what he says. It has nothing to do with me. Is that so? What an interesting relationship. Duyun elaborated, in the process of the brand acquisition, Han Jiangwool Company forced the staff from the brand to show some performance in sales, which caused massive debts, leading to a suicide case. He is the attorney in charge of the case. Moo-won asked if he was forced to step down as an attorney because of it. No, that was my personal choice. Duyun replied as he reached into the car to grab some files. Moo-won saw the orange neck pillow that Yu-rae offered him last time. It was the free gift from Glow Spa. Duyun opened the folder and stated, there is something he would like to ask Mr. Choi. Before he could pull out the file, his phone rang and it was Yu-rae who called. Moo-won caught the name Yu-rae and tensed up. Duyun told Yu-rae to not bother. He will pick her up at 6 p.m. tomorrow in front of the department store. Moo-won hid the emotions rushing to his face upon listening to another man speaking so comfortably of such a familiar name. The next day, Yu-rae glimpsed at her watch. Boss, isn't it about time for you to get going? Asked Jianhua. Can you close out the shop without me? She asked. Don't worry about it. I'm not by myself. Yun Song is with me. We will take good care of it, so you go and enjoy your meal with that snack boss. Snack? She mused. That good-looking guy. He's a snack. Jianhua answered elatedly. Do you mean Duyun? Yes. You know what? I suspect the reason assistant manager Kim stopped showing up here recently is because of him. Pondered Yuray's subordinate. Because of Duyun? Why? What do you mean by why? Kim was approaching you, but surprise. This handsome snack shows up on the scene and swoops in. You better not let him go. What nonsense. He's just like a brother to me. Yuray explained. Without not listening to her explanations, Jianhua pushed her to go. No, face the reality. Many close, dear friends end up getting married to each other. End up getting what? Mu Wan asked out of the blue, surprising them both.